Good evening all, and welcome. People can be pretty disturbing, and we are about to get plenty of doses of information on that. So get ready. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already for 3 videos every week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, as well as downloading our app for over 3,500 stories for you to listen to with sound effects and stuff, which is pretty cool. Anyway, for now it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Before I start the story, there are a few things you need to know. I am an artist, and I've always been very in my own world, almost as if I were always thinking of a story or character or picture I wanted to draw. I'd walk into wars, forget anything, anywhere, and place items in the strangest of places while I was thinking. To give you an idea to the extent of this, my first place to look for anything I've lost is the fridge or freezer. I found remotes, my cell phone, art equipment, anything really inside there. Second, I've always had a very negative view when it comes to alcohol or any other narcotics. I don't mean to shame anyone if you're hearing this, but it was always something that I generally regarded as pointless. However, if you find enjoyment in it, all the better to you. Third, I'm an asexual person. I never desire it or have any interest in finding a mate, so flirting usually flies over my head. And finally, due to my childhood, I have a mild case of anxiety disorder, which has lately been worse due to this event and escalated by others. So now that you have a good understanding about me, let's begin. This particular story begins when I graduated from an upper secondary school for visual arts. Upper secondary is the type of high school there is in Scandinavia. I had a decent enough grade, my best being biology and English, and art, of course. I immediately looked for work after graduation, since I had graduated half a year late due to some health issues and the entrance exam for universities were already done. So, by the time I graduated, I had around a year and a half before I even had the possibility of applying for uni. I also sent hundreds of applications to any place that would take me, and hardly even got invited for an interview. This all took its toll on me. The constant rejection triggered depression, and I'd hardly leave the house, and I stopped taking care of myself altogether. I wouldn't shower, put on makeup, brush my teeth, anything. I'd avoid mirrors and felt as though I was a complete and utter failure, which was not made better by my parents who pressured me with, "How many applications did you send today?" Or, "You really need to get this job so you can start saving to move out." This might sound mean, but they don't mean it in a bad way, since I'd expressed the need to get my own flat for the past few years. Not to mention my relationship with my parents at the time was very strained, and my depression made me very irritable and angry, so I can't really blame them for pushing me to get out of the house. This continued for around half a year until I finally got a job in a supermarket about 8 miles away from where I lived. Life really picked up from there. I started to take care of myself once again. The people I worked with were all very nice and I had no issues with anyone, though they were very normal, so I'd get invited to get-togethers or have a pint after work. I always made an excuse why I couldn't go and would play MMOs or something instead at home. This might sound sad, but I enjoyed myself more like that. Fast forward a year of working and I was accepted into my number one choice of university. And due to this, I cut my work hours to half. I was only at work 2 to 3 nights a week. This particular supermarket chain I worked at had a yearly festival week gimmick to boost sales. And this year we were handing out scratch cards at the checkout. Apparently, the chain had a contest with every location and the winning supermarket would be given an €1,000 cash prize for employee refreshment purposes, i.e. booze. Our supermarket decided we'd take everyone out for a night of drinking in a hotel/resort area connected to the shopping mall for our workers with the money. No surprise there, and since I had grown to be close friends with many of the other employees, it was motivation for us to win. Even if I didn't enjoy going out, everyone in the department was so excited for it, it was kind of infectious. Long story short, we won, and we went drinking. Our boss was ecstatic with how well we did, and how motivated we were. He even opened us a tab in the first bar we went to. so I had quite a bit to drink. When the first bar shut, we went with our own money to continue to a nearby nightclub. I hardly remember anything else, other than I drank like a sailor and sang karaoke horribly. We stayed until closing time, and I made my way to the train station to catch the last train home. On my way, I was stopped by a man with a thick accent, who asked if he could walk me home. I laughed and just said, "No worries." I was literally a few steps away, and motioned towards the station. He then apologized and said he thought I lived in the student buildings nearby and went on his way. I thought it was quite an endearing way to ask someone out and thought nothing more of it. Another year passed by, and I was now living alone in a student block not far away from my parents' house. The area I moved to was very poor, since it consisted of only students, so in a weird way I actually felt very safe living there. The walls were as thin as paper, so everyone else could hear if anything happened to me, or if anyone tried to break into my home. Granted, I got an email from the company that funded the cheap student blocks that the bike seller in your address was broken into, but I never kept anything in there, so it didn't faze me. Sometimes I'd even forget the keys on the lock in the front door and would wake up in the morning to a neighbor ringing my doorbell and handing me the keys with a joking, "Nothing to steal, eh?" There was also a very convenient bus that stopped right outside my door that I could take for both school and work, though I needed another bus to get all the way to work. One Saturday, after a 9-hour shift at work, looking and feeling like a total zombie, I was making my way to the bus stop through an underpass late at night, when I heard someone call out to me through my earphones. I always stopped if I heard someone call out to me when I was near work, since it was usually a colleague offering a lift, or a regular customer wanting to crack a joke, or one of the guys from GameStop upstairs wanting to talk to me about Skyrim or something. I was basically friends with nearly every employee in the mall at this point, so someone stopping me late at night in a sketchy parking lot or an underpass was relatively common. I didn't recognize the man, but then again, I handled around 600 customers every day, so I hardly ever did. I also was conditioned to flash a bright smile through years of customer service whenever I met anyone's eyes, even outside work. I'm sure the ones who've worked in customer service jobs for long enough can relate to this. The man spoke hurriedly in a thick accent about how he was in love with me and how he had been watching me. It was very hard to make sense of anything he was saying. He spoke almost like it was a stream of consciousness. What I did make out was that he had seen me in a bar, which he named, and ever since he had been watching me and never before found the courage to talk to me before now. I was unsettled by the choice of words, but chuckled to him, not being a native speaker. I listened to him while I nervously eyed the underpass, feeling glad that there were a few people walking through it during this whole spiel. After he quieted down, I just awkwardly said, "Okay, thanks, but I need to go or I'm going to miss my bus," and turned to continue on, when he grabbed me and pushed me towards the wall of the underpass. I was around 30 centimeters taller than him, but he had a lot of mass over me, since the most sport I had ever done was acrobatics and ballet, and I'd quit even that many years before. I considered punching him or screaming, but I felt it better not to escalate the situation, so I sternly told him to let me go and that I needed to get to the station. He pleaded for me to give him a chance and said that he wouldn't let me go before I did. I was racking my brain about the safest way out of this situation, so I tentatively told him, "What if I save your number and I'll see if I call you?" I had used this on another persistent suitor before and it had worked just fine. Now I wish I'd never said those words. The man's face lit up and he started to spell out his name. He was from somewhere in the Middle East. While I pulled out my phone and hammered his name and number into my phone, sighing in relief, I was almost back at my house. He suddenly grabbed my hand and tore my phone from it. At this point I angrily screamed, "What are you doing? Give it back!" But to my horror, everyone had moved from the underpass and I was alone with the creeper. He ignored me, struggling and screaming completely, and calmly just called his own phone number from it, before handing it back to me, as if what he just did was completely normal. I stared at him, terrified and dumbfounded. Then he hugged me tight, cupping a feel and tried to kiss me. I hurriedly blocked his mouth with my hand and forcibly pushed him away. I didn't see anything anymore. I just ran out of the underpass, and he didn't try to stop me. When I was safely at home, I blocked his number first, then deleted it, thinking any deity possible that when I moved out and got a new phone, my father had insisted on an unlisted one, so he couldn't find my address out by Google. I asked my manager to not give me the Saturday night shift for a while and explained the issue I had with her. I also asked her if he could be banned from the store or something, but she told me that she couldn't do anything before I filed a restraining order. Obviously, I had no idea what the man's name or number was anymore. Not to mention, getting a restraining order on him based on what I had as evidence was very unlikely. A few weeks went by, and he showed up when I was at work without fail, as if he knew my shift, even though I had a different shift every week. He would just stare at me from outside the shop, or buy a single lollipop or something else, something cheap, multiple times a day, paying with cash, so that I had to extend my hand out to him, which he always took and held for as long as possible if there was no other customers there. The horrible thing about this was that it was not unusual to get a creepy customer every so often. Every now and then you'd get them if you worked as a cashier. Mentally ill or just socially inept, desperate people mistake customer service as genuine interest, painfully often. And you hardly paid any more attention to it than the other customers, since nearly always it's a short-term kind of thing and harmless. The man could have been stalking me for God knows how long, and I don't think I would have noticed. The thought that I only noticed this now that I'd had the earlier encounter with him, was enough for me to lose sleep over, and getting recurring sleep paralysis nightmares of someone entering my room and breathing heavily in my ear as a result. This went on, and it was now a few days until I had 8 weeks off work for summer vacation, which I had requested, half paid, half unpaid. The thought of not having to go to work and face the man every day was enough to cheer me up, so I threw myself into an extracurricular school project, a game for a museum exhibit. One day I had stayed at school working on a 2D rig for said project until school was closing and the janitor ushered me out of the classroom. I had a little while before my bus was due to arrive at the stop, so I decided to catch some fresh air after working nearly 12 hours on the computer and walked to the nearby station that was at the end of the line. The bus was already waiting, so I rushed in, and after I paid the fee, I faced the back of the bus and my stomach turned. There he was, with 3 friends, the guy in a thick accent. My stalker. We were the only passengers. I contemplated exiting the bus, but the next one wouldn't be for at least an hour, so against all common sense I decided to stay on. I sat at the very front of the bus hoping he wouldn't notice me, but as soon as the bus left the station he moved to sit next to me, and his friends moved to sit beside me, as if he knew this was the line I usually took, and just waited so that I couldn't exit the bus. I was ready to throw up, so I turned the music in my ears so loud it hurt. I ignored every tap and shoulder grab. I clenched my laptop back on my lap, ready to sacrifice my computer and smack him in the face with it if he tried to do anything else. Then the realization hit me. This line stopped literally on the front door of my building. My name was plastered on the front door of it. He would know where I lived. I felt as though I could burst into a howling cry at any minute. My thoughts were going a mile a minute, considering everything that could happen to me if I didn't have a way to get out of this situation. I knew there was a longer stop coming up later, so I decided to try and make my break there. When the stop rolled around, music still breaking my eardrums, heart pounding, I said, "Sorry, I need to get off," and made my way to the mid-doors. All 4 men followed me, speaking fast in what I assume is Hebrew. When the door opened, I stepped out and walked for a while, before suddenly turning back and running like I was possessed, back into the bus and yelling at the driver, "Please drive, just drive!" The driver looked taken aback, looked at the men who were running towards the bus and back at my face, twisted into loud sobs and how I was shaking, and decided I was serious. He closed the doors and sped off. He stopped the bus at a garage a few miles away and asked if he could do anything, like call the cops. I just kept crying and retold my first encounter to him, when something in my head clicked. The bar. He had specifically named it. It was the nightclub we went to continue our drinks over a year ago when we won that contest. I had never been after I had visited that time. He said he saw me there. He had been tailing me for over a year. That night, he was the one who offered to walk me home. That's why he showed up at my work without fail whenever I was working. I sobbed, howled like a damned tortured cat, and the driver told me to go lie down in the back and that he'd drive me home. I told him it was the last stop. The driver dropped me off safely home before he continued his round, risking his job for my safety. I couldn't thank him enough. I didn't even know his name. After the second incident, I called in work sick until my vacation and cut my hair and dyed it black. I also spent the vacation biking around my hometown during the day, not venturing to the town my work and school were at for the whole 2 months. I occasionally still sometimes have those sleep paralysis nightmares, but very fortunately, I never saw him again. A small part of me thinks it's because he doesn't want me to. One thing's for sure though, I never left my keys in my lock again. So to the creepy man with the thick accent, I implore you, never come looking for me again. I was in California visiting my brother, who went to Pepperdine. So me and my family are out shopping on this really big street full of amazing stores. The first night we were on the same street for dinner, and in fact, we spent a lot of time on that little strip. There was a homeless man sitting on the side outside the restaurant, and as we were walking out, my dad gave me a $5 bill to give to the homeless man. He had white hair and a long beard. He reminded me of Gandalf. I handed him the $5 and he said thank you, and nodded, and I smiled and skipped off back to my parents. Well, then I started noticing this dude everywhere, seriously everywhere, walking around the hotel parking lot and chilling out on the sidewalk like multiple times throughout the week-long trip. On our last day in Cali, we went back in the same area where I originally encountered the man. We were on our way back to the car, but we decided to go into the souvenir store really quick. My parents walked out with me. Being the third child, this is normal, as I'm not sure if my parents are even aware I exist sometimes. My life is literally the dark sequel to Home Alone. Once I realize my family are not in the store, I walk out the door trying to catch up when Gandalf the homeless man grabs me by the shoulder and literally turns my whole body to face him. He looks me straight in the eyes and tells me how beautiful I am, passes me a piece of folded up paper, hugs me so tight, this was weird by the way, and kissed me on the neck. Obviously I knew this was whack, and once I was fully aware of the danger, I untangled myself from him and booked it down the sidewalk to catch up with my parents. As I was struggling to get away from the man, he keeps repeating, "Don't show your mum, don't show your mum," over and over. Like, dude, come on, I'm obviously gonna tell her. Anyway, I run up to my parents, and I'm like traumatized, and they don't even notice. I open up the letter he gave me and it says, "I have been watching you. It's been such a pleasure being in your company for the last week. I find your smell and look so appealing, and you're the most captivating person I've ever come across." This was only a tiny fraction of the letter. There was much more to it front and back. Unfortunately, I never got to read the whole thing because my parents finally noticed I have this weird, dirty, and crinkled up piece of paper, and the look on my face was priceless. My dad grabs it out of my hand and reads it, but not aloud. He gets about halfway down the paper, then screams, "That's disgusting," crinkles it up, and throws it aggressively in the trash. I wish I knew what it said, but it's probably best I didn't for my sake. There are so many questions like, how did this guy know my hotel? Was it because of the parking lot? I saw him once out the window wandering around the hotel, which was a good mile away from where I first saw him. How did the dude show up so many times in my week-long trip? Obviously, he was stalking us on purpose. Did he know it was my last night, and that's why he felt the need to give me a letter? Is he even homeless or just a creepy stalker that likes to prowl the streets for a new child? Who knows? I guess I never will. But I hope I never see him again. My story takes place in Florida. I was around 12 to 13 years of age. At the time, I was struggling with some family issues and school bullies. So I was in and out of school, and my mother and I were discussing putting me in homeschool. My aunt suggested a way to help me make friends and keep me in school. Girl Scouts. You read that right. Send me to the group of little girls that sells cookies and makes the whole United States fat and their mouths water at the thought of them. So I agreed because I was desperate for friends. When I say that, I mean I talked to stuffed toys and made up voices for them so that I didn't feel alone. Sad, I know. But this was the truth. It is also very important because I want you all to know where my head was. I ended up going to my first troop meeting. A week after the choice had been made, I was super excited. Sadly, it wasn't what I thought it would be. The girls there, although nice, were a bit hard for me to get close to. It was a small troop of about 5 to 8 girls, and they certainly ran in different social circles than me. Their parents were also way more gung-ho about this whole scout thing than my mother expected. They wanted this to be a stepping stone to their daughters' huge careers in college and classes. Anyway, after being part of the troop for 2 to 4 months, it didn't go well. The girls shunned me and I grew even more lonely. I even decided to approach a girl asking her why she didn't like me. She had no problem telling me, so my mum withdrew me. Another 2 to 3 months later, another troop showed up in our area and my mother decided we'd give it another go. After all, not all girl troops are like that. People are different, and she was certain someone would want to be friends with me. She was really right. I did end up making friends. Not the entire troop was in love with me, but the troop leader's daughter and I had become the best of friends. Of course, my mother was thrilled. I finally had a friend, and was starting to smile again. It hurts parents quite a bit to see their kids upset. Her and I did everything together. We didn't go to the same school, but it didn't matter, because we'd have sleepovers every weekend. I'd go over to her house every other day after school and do homework. She had parties, lots of them. Anytime her mother thought her daughter had something to celebrate, she'd throw a big party for her, and being her daughter's best friend, I was always seated next to her. It was one of the happiest times of my life. I felt important to someone other than my family. I had a place to go outside my home, where trouble always seemed to lurk. A year turned into the second. We finished Christmas. She actually came to my birthday party and got me a gift and everything. Then things started to get weird. Because I was a year older than her, I had a bit more homework, being that I was also a grade level ahead of her. She had apparently convinced her mother to change her schools, so now she was attending mine. This was great, I was once again over the moon. The only sad thing was that we didn't have the same classes or the same lunch period. Well, that soon changed too. She showed up once for my lunch and I thought it was weird. Apparently her mother had pulled some strings and got her to lunch at my time. I didn't know the details, I just knew my best friend and I could eat together. I remember telling my mum, and she didn't let on that anything was the matter. But later when we talked about this after I'd grown up a little, she admitted the news concerned her. Then though, she just acted like it was the best news and I was happy. I started to go fishing with her and her uncle during the summer. Spent weeks over at her house with her mother and uncle. I'll admit the uncle was a bit different. I mean, he didn't set off any alarm bells, but he wasn't your usual uncle. As far as our Girl Scouts troop went, we became the leaders. We pushed our troop into camping trips and selling cookies more and more. It was great. I'd never been so highly regarded. The girls in the troop even began treating me like one of them. I was so happy to fit in. That ended up changing quite a lot, actually. Towards the end of the summer, I discovered her uncle wasn't really her uncle, more of a guy trying very hard to make her happy so that he could bang her mum. He eventually stopped coming round and her mother, I noticed, drank a lot. More than I'd seen any adult drink at the time. The end of summer meant our trip was coming to an end, the last camping trip we would get before classes started up again. I was excited to go. My mum and I bought everything we thought I would need, and my best friend and I jumped right into the van. I waved goodbye to my mum, and away my troop went. Now it's important to admit here that I had a love of horror stories. I've always loved spooky stuff and the occult, so the idea of a camping trip meant campfires and scary night stories. I was excited. Once we got to the campgrounds, I realized it wasn't going to be like camping with my family. It was a huge gathering of other troops all over, older scouts, younger scouts, and us. Of course, the older scouts told us there were some creepy gnomes or troll-like creatures near the lake, but none of us believed them. It was a fun weekend, just not the same kind of fun I expected. I never got to tell my stories, and it was more about building teamwork and Girl Scouting stuff than I thought it would be. I know, what did I expect, right? You live and learn. Anyway, the last night I decided I would tell a ghost story. In fact, I insisted on it. So after the troop leader went to bed, my friend and I gathered all the troop in one tent, as we'd been separated into two, and the stories began. We each told a story, or a funny, embarrassing one, and then I was the last one to tell a tale. I told my story, scared the other girls, and we hurried back into our respective tents before daybreak. Then we all packed up and got our rides home. Everything was fine until the next meetup for my troop, a week later. My mother and I showed up, and there were the adults looking very angry. Mothers, fathers, all of them. My friend's mother stepped up to my mum and pulled us aside. This is what I remember from that conversation. Listen, your daughter isn't welcome in the troop anymore. What? Why? What happened? Well, it seems that she told a story at camp, and it gave some of the other girls nightmares. The other adults requested she no longer come to troop meetings. Are you serious? It was just a story. You can't, she didn't know. She loves this group. This is where her friends are. Why didn't you tell me this early in the week when I was dropping her off at your house? The troop leader shrugged and sighed. At this point, I took off running away from my mother and friend's mother. I wanted to talk to my friend, to the other girls of the troop. I was going to apologize to them and their parents. I found my friend. She didn't seem heartbroken in any way. In fact, she was okay with it. My friend went on to say, I never liked sharing them with you anyway. They were all stuck up and snobby. They just didn't get you. I get you. We're like sisters. So now, you and I can be together more. What? But I liked the other girls and being in the troop, and what about when the troop meetings happen? So, you're asking me to quit the troop? I'll do that. I'll make my mum quit too. No more troop. No, that's not what I'm saying. Listen, we're best friends forever, remember? BFFs. Anyone who doesn't like you isn't a good person, and I don't like them. It was the sweetest and nicest thing I'd ever heard from anyone. She was so into being my friend, best friend, that she'd give up this entire group. I broke down in tears. I was happy. I was sad. It was a lot to take in. Sure enough, the troop would be disbanded after this. It would be a month, but eventually it no longer carried on. Her and I remained friends though, and I continued hanging out with her at her house. Another uncle came into the picture. That Christmas I spent at her house. Christmas night, her mother and the uncle let us, a couple of 13 to 14-year-old girls, take a full flute of champagne. I wasn't fond of it, but we felt so adult. The uncle kept making some rather inappropriate comments about my friend and I. Her mother became annoyed. They fought. He left. The next morning was hazy at best, but I remember finding my best friend in my sleeping bag with me. It didn't weird me out. We did that sometimes, crashed in each other's beds. The next week, she called me any time I wasn't with her. Our friendship became much more creepy. The calls were every hour when I wasn't with her. She said a lot of, I love yous, and you are mine, my best friend, mine. I didn't think anything of it. Our sleepovers got weirder. I was waking up and always having my friend in my sleeping bag. If she wasn't there, she'd beg me the night before to lay with her in her bed. I just thought, her home life was as rough as mine, and that's what drew us together, right? Then, one day, she admitted she liked me, in a way that I like you. I was speechless, and because I felt I was way too young for a relationship or anything, that thought came with it. I bowed out. I told her I cared for her as a friend, and we could still be friends, but that I wasn't ready for that to change. She said she understood, and went a week without calling me. I thought I'd hurt her. I even thought about calling her to say I loved her too, if that's what it would take for us to be friends again. I didn't though. I was scared to. At the end of the week I got a call from her and she's acting like nothing happened. We started hanging out again, though she kept bringing up that she felt something for me. It got to the point where she was even attempting to try physically help me love her. Yeah, I ended up noping it out of that friendship. One day I just had enough and told her we couldn't be friends anymore. She seemed to handle it okay. I mean, she cried a bit, I cried a bit. I felt so heartbroken. I was in 8th grade and honestly didn't like where we were at. And since I'd be going to a new school, I thought a clean slate would help. Some things happened to my household family-wise, and I ended up being homeschooled instead. Weeks after school started, and I hadn't heard anything from her, I got a note in the mailbox. There were notes every day in my mailbox now. Love letters, angry letters, sad letters, all from my ex-best friend. Then her mother began leaving letters. Not for my mum, but for me. Both of them would leave letters in the box. The ex-friend always had them varied, but the mothers were pretty clear. I'd heard her daughter, and she wasn't happy. That's when the phone call started. As cliché as it sounds, the phone would be answered and all we'd hear is breathing, then they'd hang up. This persisted for 6 months. After 3 months, the letters stopped and it was just the phone calls. We had so much going on family-wise that this harassment was tame, so we never dealt with it, and after 6 months, it all stopped. We didn't hear from the girl nor her mother again. They still live in the same city. My mum still saw her mum around town and stuff, but they never spoke. Fast forward 2 to 3 years and I ran into my ex-best friend again. We were at the library and I was polite and she was polite. It was pretty chill and it sounded like her life was good. After that meeting though, the calls started again, and they carried on for about a month then stopped. I never heard from the girl again. I've since moved away and everything. The only reason this memory came up is because I was on the phone with my mother the other day. She said she saw the girl. She said she looked pretty rough. I felt bad for her, but not at the same time. It's only when I got older that I realized how serious and sinister things got with that, well, toxic friendship. So to my ex-best friend and her stalker mother, let's not meet again. This super happy fun experience took place 5 years ago, after a whole other incident with a neighbor stalking me. But this isn't about that. I had just started working a new job after Christmas. The company I worked for took over an account of a building closer to my home, so I transferred to the newly acquired location. After my first week there, some of the people began to ask me about my relationship status and began to take an interest in me. This little ray of sunshine happened to be single back then, but I was not ready to mingle. I was focused on work, my family, and school. I was only there for about 3 months and didn't end up liking the new location, so I left for a better suited job. Imagine my shock when some of the workers wished me an early happy birthday and luck at my new job. In a completely clownish move, the manager had disclosed where I would be working, which I thought was a bit crappy. As I'm leaving, I'd seen something that I'd never noticed before. A phone list of employees with first and last names printed in the break room. Of the many what the actual hell moments to come, that was the first. I let the manager know he needed to remove me from it, as I no longer worked there, and 2, would not be okay with it, even if I were to continue as an employee. He shrugged it off with the attitude of someone who assumes an upset woman is having her time in the month, rolled his eyes, and begrudgingly removed the piece of paper. I was thrilled to start my new job when the call started. Looking back, there had been maybe 3 months prior to what I believed was the beginning of this, but they weren't as persistent, so I didn't link them together. I just want to say that I have a tendency to bleach every red flag white. Please trust your instincts, and scary movie, run away when red flags are presented. So, I began to receive phone calls from a blocked number every week, only Fridays to Sundays, but with holidays, and always between 1 to 4 a.m. I have a weird thing about having my phone near me, and often at night ever since my sister's accident. When she had said accident and they tried to call me about her, my phone was often in the other room. For everyone who wants to ask why I didn't just shut it off or put it away, this is why. I'm an insomniac and a night sleeper, so the calls always woke me up. I tried answering them without saying more than hello, but always just heard breathing. This had gone on for 3 weeks when my birthday came. I worked my new job, then the rebel that I am went and got a red box to take and have pizza and movie night with my parents to celebrate. So I'm scrolling through the ridiculously dull selection of red box tiles on my phone ring, when one of the girls from my new job tells me that a guy who identified himself as my boyfriend had come and dropped off pizza, flowers, and a card for my birthday. Confused, I said I didn't have a boyfriend, and she nervously laughs and said that she found it very strange my boyfriend wouldn't know it was my day off work, and that he would need to leave the stuff there rather than give it to me in person. I thanked her, got my movie, and didn't give it too much thought. It was my birthday, so that was a problem for me tomorrow. The next day I opened the card at work, and it's tickets, photocopied. Not the actual ones I could have used to a place 4 hours away. In the card there was a lengthy poem and details on the trip, complete with dates, hotel name, and the person planned to take us on. Creep factor raised. I had no idea who this was from, and when I asked the co-worker, they could only give me a generic description. The weekend comes, and like clockwork, the calls come in. I decide not to answer and just decline the call. Life goes on. My mystery night and potential restraining order never came back to my work, and the calls continue. These calls went on for 3 years. I'll save you the unnecessary details, but I've changed jobs and moved in those years. The calls did not stop until the winter of last year. I tried answering and asking who it was. I tried screaming and cussing them out. I'd even tried having my friend answer. I tried having males answer and threaten. Basically, I tried more than Sam I Am tried to get you to eat green eggs and ham. A few times they would have a song queued up to play when I answered. The more it went on, the more emboldened they got. Then they started heavy breathing, and then whispering my name. At one point they ended up graphically describing what they dreamed of doing to me. I called the cops, who said without an actual threat they couldn't do anything. Dreams don't count as threats, is what I was told. I called the phone company to see if they could tell me the number of the caller, who told me they couldn't disclose that and to call the cops. I ended the phone call with a cheery, "When you see someone wearing my skin as a suit on the news, remember this. Have a great day." I am now debating on changing my phone number. There are personal legit reasons why I didn't do this before, but also seriously concerned with who the hell this is. For someone to be committed to calling you every weekend for the rest of that long is extremely frightening. One morning, after another 2 unknown missed calls, I wake up from a text from an unknown number, and I'm greeted with an unsolicited dick pic. Fun fact, no one wants an unsolicited dick pic. I responded stating if whoever it was ever contacted me again, their photo and phone number would be placed on Craigslist Men Seeking so that they could get their own share of dick pics. I reverse searched the number, and lo and behold, I got a name of someone who I briefly worked with at the beginning of this story. And then it all started to click. That the call started once I began that job. This guy would have known where my new job was and about my birthday, since the co-workers I had working there wished me an early happy birthday on my last day. Sending him that pic solidified that he was the caller. That's all, folks. Anticlimactic ending. Never saw or heard from him again, thankfully. So, to the weird obsessive guy, I guess we probably won't meet ever again. I want to start this off by saying that I haven't shared this story with anyone, mainly due to fear, because the guy in question is the son of one of my dad's friends, and I just know for a fact that my father will inevitably end up blaming all of this on me. I am currently a senior in high school and live in a pretty nice town in Northern Carolina. It all started a year ago when I was 16. At the time, I was working at Starbucks as a barista. It was Thursday, and surprisingly the cafe was almost empty. A few minutes before the end of my shift, one of my colleagues informed me that a cute guy is here to see you. I was somewhat confused. I didn't have a boyfriend at the time, and I'm pretty average, so I couldn't imagine that a guy would be interested in me. As I turned around, I recognized the boy instantly. It was Skip, my dad's best friend's son. He's 3 years older than me, and for a reason that I wasn't aware of, he enjoyed making me feel miserable, calling me fat and ugly, and all other sweet things that you really want to hear as an already insecure teenager. So for obvious reasons, seeing him at my workplace did not fill me with joy. Now, on a completely objective point of view, he was a very good-looking boy. Blonde hair, blue eyes, but he knew that he was attractive, which made me want to punch his smirk off his handsome face. Skips was there to apologize for being a complete douchebag, and confessed that he actually really liked me, but didn't know how to act around me because I radiated such a powerful energy, almost like it was destabilizing. Weird timing, but okay. Being the dumb girl that I was, I accepted his apologies, and from that moment on we kept in touch every day. He would send me a good morning and a good night text, give me cute nicknames and whatever couples do. However, he never asked me to be his girlfriend, but would introduce himself to others as my one and true love. I should have seen the red flags from the start. He would show up at my place without asking me at least once a week. I live alone with my dad, who's actually really like the boy, so my old man didn't really care about his constant presence at home. After a few months into our relationship, I decided to call it off. He was being really possessive. He was jealous of my girlfriends, and I discovered that he was in contact with his previous girlfriend and kept on telling me not to worry about it. Yeah, did that ever work for anyone? Didn't think so. His reaction wasn't what I expected. He shrugged and was like, "Okay, whatever you want, bae." Don't get me wrong, I didn't want him to hurt because of me, but he seemed no nonchalant about this. It was almost worrying. I thought this story would end there, but oh boy was I wrong. Even after the breakup, he kept on coming over and taking naps on my bed while I wasn't home. When I confronted him about it, he would respond with, "I came to see your dad," or "We're still friends. I don't see what's bothering you." Well, honey, what's bothering me is that if you weren't wearing an expensive-ass cologne with a strong-ass smell, I wouldn't have known you came to my room to begin with. I tried to tell my dad that Skips and I were no longer together, and that he had no right to come over and make himself at home in my own room. He laughed and said I was being a drama queen, so I guess you understand why I'm kind of stuck at this point. What I didn't know was that Skips was basically following me everywhere. I noticed it a few weeks ago, but I'm pretty sure that it had been going on for quite some time now. He would follow my car as I was going to school, park his truck in the Starbucks parking lot whenever I was working, and would peek through the bedroom window and leave handprints that I only saw after some time. How did this dumb chick not notice it before? Well, as any horror movie fan and true crime podcast enthusiast, it's not unusual to feel observed or spied on. At least I think. Plus his truck was pretty common, so I couldn't tell if it was him or not, until a few weeks ago my car had a problem with one of the tires, so I had to take the bus for a little while. One morning as I got to my house, I saw his truck and immediately made out his face as he was sitting in the driver's seat. That's when I connected the dots. My gut feeling was going into frenzy whenever I was out. 3 of my tires being slashed, the handprints on my bedroom window. When the realization hit me, a shiver ran down my spine. I felt paralyzed and a tear welled up in my eyes. I felt nauseous and decided that I needed to talk to someone about it, because I've read enough stories about it, and trust me when I tell you that crazy ex-boyfriend plus helpless girl never go well together. I made my mind up and told my friend Tyler, who's 5 years older than me and is studying law. After I shared the whole story, he told me that unfortunately there wasn't anything I could do because I didn't have any concrete evidence, and it would be my word against Skip's, and he's a damn good manipulator. Now I'm stuck because I don't know what to do. I tried to take pictures of his car, but due to the lack of light in my neighborhood, I never managed to snap one in which he would be recognizable. Whenever he's parked in front of the house and we make eye contact, he usually just starts the truck and drives off. I haven't seen him in 3 days, but my gut feeling is still making me go crazy. Who knows when Skips will show up again. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. Stalkers can be really flipping creepy. I've never had a stalker, and I'm fairly glad of it. Don't you get any ideas, guys? For real. Don't need a stalker. Don't want a stalker. Don't stalk me. I'm only joking. I know you guys wouldn't stalk me. I'm probably not worth stalking anyway. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Potential stalkers, stop listening. Yes, so if any of you have ever had a really horrifying, terrifying, or anything scary happen to you, stalker or otherwise, you can email it to me or post it on my Reddit, links in the description. In fact, you should probably read the description, because there you can find the links to my Patreon and Coffee and YouTube memberships, which is where you donate to have your name on the screen. You can find where you need to send me the stories if you want to share one. You can also find the links to all the stories in case you wanted to read them and stuff, which have all been obtained with loving permission. And the background music and stuff, all the other things that go there. So yeah. Oh, and there's a secret message section at the very bottom of the description, which very few people know about, but I think I'll just remind you. And this is the first time this year that I've told you. But basically every video in the last 4 years, roundabouts, has had that. Stay awesome, guys. Don't stalk me, people. Don't stalk me. Don't even say it in the comments. I'm getting scared now. Alright, I'm gonna go.